Welcome back to the Regal Gentleman YouTube channel. Still at my house, unfortunately. We are doing a Q&A again today, and I really loved the last one. It was awesome. Got so many questions, and we do get a lot of questions sent all the time. So we've picked just a few random questions. We'll try and answer them as best you can. So first question is from _Ryan_8, and he has asked, best hairstyles for a cow's lick. I'd say the best hairstyles you can go for are something to work with the cow's lick. So if you're fortunate enough for the cow's lick to part, say like just mine's slightly cow's lick here, actually it's just off. I've got a cow's lick just there with a nice little grey streaks coming through, but I've that is where my hair wants to naturally part, so I'm going with the cow's lick. So if you are fortunate enough to have a cow's lick either left or right, then you can work a pattern into that, especially if the crown is sitting in the right place. If, for example, you have a cow's lick at the front, just through the front here, then there's kind of only two options really. You've got to shave it off and go for maybe a bit of a mod style, or go for like a really short crop fringe. I'll tell you the best example of this, of that hairstyle that I'm talking about with the cow's lick being here, is Liam Gallagher from Oasis. If you look at any of his pictures, he's actually got a cow's lick at the very front here. And that is, I think that's why he's gone for that kind of mod hairstyle, because it's set so heavy behind the cow's lick with the fringe gone that it gives the appearance of a full hairline. It gets rid of the cow's lick. So what you can essentially ask for is, if you watch our videos where we're doing our crop fringe, where we take the fringe short, then we start to layer the hair onto the fringe itself. So you work it to the front, and then that layer behind gets longer, and so on. So that is basically what that is. So you're laying it flat onto the cow's lick being really short to give the appearance of a smooth and sort of natural hairline, shall we say, or a full hairline. So that's a good hairstyle. I know it's not for everybody, but it doesn't have to be a mod. It could be, again, like I said, a crop fringe. Take the fringe right off and have that texture sit heavy on top of it with, say, a skin fade, or whatever you want on the back and sides. With the side part that I was talking about before, another thing you can do with that as well is if you've got a cow's lick sitting sort of, say, here or here, just like kind of off where the recession point is you can work the pattern into that, and then you can also shave out the one side of the cow's lick to kind of lose the cow's lick kind of look of it, if you know what I mean. So you've got the pattern which is coming from the cow's lick, which looks really natural, and then by taking the other side of the cow's lick off where the pattern is, will make it look a lot more smarter, a lot sharper as well. So it almost hides the cow's lick. So I'd say they're two very good styles if you've got a cow's lick either side or one in the middle. The next question was from Stephen Tanner _, and he asked, what would you suggest is a good haircut for curly hair that gets unmanageable quickly? I would say, first and foremost, I would say it's not necessarily the haircut, it's how the hair is cut. So what I mean by that is, when you're working with curly hair, you've got to cut the shape in. You've got to cut the primary shape. Okay, so when you texturize curly hair, a lot of the time you don't tend to texturize it an awful lot, because it does the texturizing itself. So by the way the curls dry and the way you can manipulate the drying process, you don't always have to texturize it too heavily. So I would say for a hairstyle for Stephen, I would say, first of all, get the hair cut correctly. So get it cut into the primary shape. Then whatever you want to go with, say you want a short haircut, again, as long as you stick into the primary shape and you're working with the curls and the shape of the curls, essentially getting the cut dry. A dry cut on curls is fantastic because you see exactly how it wants to fall naturally. So I would say go for, any hairstyle that you really want, I suppose, without obviously seeing what your hair is like, Stephen, just from the basis that if you sat in the chair and with this almost like a blind consultation, should we say, the main thing I would look to do is to cut the curls in that match your face shape. So without seeing what you look like, your face shape is what defines the shape of the cut from the back and sides to the top. So again, I'd probably get the haircut correctly more than picking a style to start with. And then obviously once the top is cut correctly or the sides are cut, then you can obviously start to work with your barber to manipulate whichever way you want to go to with the hairstyle. So as long as you're getting the curls cut properly, you can start to adapt your hairstyle around them. I'd probably say that's the best thing. So the next question is from The Lone Mute. Great name. I wonder if I can just go to a barbershop and ask what kind of haircut would best look for me, because I really don't have a clue what haircut suits me. Well, yeah, in an ideal world, that should be the case. I'd like to think You could, personally. It's a bit of a tough question because, again, when I had my shop, I was always quite strict on the training, making sure that there was a vast knowledge of barbering and bits of hairdressing, to be fair, within my team and myself as well. So I'd say in an ideal world that should be the case, and hopefully, if I don't know, it's a tough one for me to answer because I'd like to say yes, but I don't know if you can everywhere. But I'd like to say yes. I've got high expectations with barbers, especially the barbering of today, like 2021. There's some unbelievable barbers, not just the haircuts, but like just the knowledge of barbering is so much more advanced than it was when I started off. I'm gonna say yeah, and hopefully you can prove me right. The next question is from Dan Willow 1. How do you get curls naturally? Now, this question, Regal Gentleman, I've answered as well. So I'm going to read out Regal Gentleman's answer, see if it's true, see if I can, use it. I'll tell you if you're wrong. All right, Liam. So Dan Willow 1 asked, how do you get curls naturally? So Liam or Josh, whoever it was doing it, says, depends on your hair texture. If you already have some natural wave / bend to the hair, then it's going to be easier. Good answer. It's true. And then Dan Willow replied, my hair is wavy-ish. Any tips? Okay, so adding on to what Regal Gentleman said on the comments, when you've got wavy hair, the way to create more curl is through product choice, obviously haircuts as well. If you thin the hair out a little bit more, tends to help the curls, tends to help wavy hair become curlier. I don't just mean kind of bashing through it with a pair of thin scissors. I mean genuinely, working within, feeling the thickness of the hair, feeling what parts of the hair need to be thinned out, which need to be maybe slightly texturized with maybe a razor or slide cutting or something like that. But the main thing you want to do is it's the drying process, really. It's the product choice. So like a curl definer or a curl cream or something along the lines of that, and then working with a diffuser or with movement clips as well. So I know movement clips sounds quite a big thing to do, but the reality is you can buy clips. If you type in movement grips or movement clips or something, they're kind of like they almost look like a guitar pluck. Is that right? Is that the right word? With a clip on the end. So you basically set the wave where you want it. So you pick the wave that's long enough, and then you clip it with some product in while it's damp, and you put the clip in, and you just let it set. Another thing you can do again is if you use like say again like a curl definer or something like that, is applying it wet and then just scrunching it, really scrunching the hair. Okay, but don't kind of like just rub it through your fingers because it tends to it can sometimes break away. So you can almost like massage the hair in a little bit through your fingers like this. And what they'll do, it will create a bit more looser bend, a bit more of a natural wave, and then just let it dry naturally. The best thing you can do is let it dry naturally, the curls. If you're short for time or you want to create more volume, for example, in the wave or the curls, adding a diffuser to it is brilliant. But again, a diffuser, if you just hold it around the hair, like so, and just kind of almost like you hold it straight, or you can also, if you've got long enough hair, you can kind of work the diffuser into the hair to help kind of dry it as it's starting to get more curl in it, then that's a good option. But again, it's mainly, again, it's product choice is a key thing for curly hair, and also the way you're having it cut. So if you want to accentuate the wave, then yeah, just try a few of them ideas that we've just put to you then, and fingers crossed, if you've got any pictures, shows before and afters, that would be cool to see if the advice worked. That's what I tend to do in the shop. So this question is, recommend any decent styles for a lad with a bug forehead and dodgy hairline. And then a laugh, a crying out loud laughing emoji. Okay. My interpretation of that is, okay, so it depends how confident you are with the bits that you don't feel you like about yourself. So if you've got what you describe as, say, I'm thinking of bug forehead, I'm thinking a lot of forehead exposed is what I'm thinking. I would go for something that, and again, it's hard to say without seeing your hairline or anything like that, but wearing a fringe heavier is always good on the fringe. It's always good to hide the forehead, in a sense. Wearing it, kind of go maybe for like a more top heavy finish as well, maybe a very short back and sides, more top heavy finish. What it'll do is it'll take away the distraction of what you're feeling. So the confidence levels that you might not be getting from the features that you clearly don't like about yourself, is if you let the top grow a bit heavier, even if the fringe, like you said, your hairline isn't too, it's a dodgy hairline, but most guys don't think they've got a good hairline when they actually kind of have. It's sort of in their mind they haven't got one, but what I'll tell them is they'll be like, I'm thinning on the hairline. I'm like, you're really not. And I think it's getting that understanding to the person, to the client, that the hairline isn't that bad. It's say the hairline's too far back, for example, right? You don't want to leave it too heavy on the front because it does look a bit, it can look like you're trying to cover something up. If you can try and maybe go something more top heavy, I would say is the best thing, because that way it does kind of distract away from everything else. So it doesn't have to be long on the fringe, just a lot more length on the top. Take the back and sides away. The distraction will be taken away from, say, the facial features and more on the fade, for example, or more on the texture on top. So I would suggest that's the best thing to do. And work with the hairline, you know, kind of maybe get more of a crop. I know it sounds crazy going against the forehead, for example, but sometimes the haircut itself will distract the features of the person if you want to try and hide them, for example. So if that makes sense, I would go for something like that. So mainly looking at a top heavy kind of hairstyle. Thank you very much. Huge biceps, man. Next one. So Ross Couch 01. What hairstyle would you advise for me? I have a squarish face with strong blue eyes, tidy brows, and a less prominent jawline. Okay, you look like you're kind of winning at life there, to be honest, Ross, straight away. So we're looking at a squarish face, okay? Strong blue eyes, tidy brows. Okay, so the strong blue eyes and tidy brows, I mean, I'd say the brows, if you were wearing the fringe down and heavy, would distract away, because obviously if you've got very thick eyebrows and you've got fringe, it does distract it slightly. I would say jawline itself doesn't matter too much, I would say, and if you've got the squarish face, because the square face, the jawline doesn't have to be too prominent in that sense. If the face is square enough, hairstyle-wise, we're looking at, say, so I'm looking at Liam on the picture now. Now, Liam's face shape is quite oval, okay? So Liam tends to go for something that's quite short down the bottom to fill out the bulk through the corners here, okay? So what that does, squares here and then rounds off. And that's kind of always the kind of shape we're looking for. Emphasizing the jawline and trying to keep that squareness in the sides. If you've got quite a squarish face, you don't want to keep too much bulk through the corner. You're not looking to create any sort of corner here, really. You can get away with kind of taking the corner a bit higher. So if we're looking at a hairstyle, let's just stick to a very basic kind of short back and sides hairstyle, just for it to be a bit easier to explain. You don't want to be looking at anything that is like going to be maybe going down to skin too low and then building up colour and weight here. So when you start seeing the colour of the hair coming through against the scalp exposure, you don't want to be doing too much of that when you've got a square face, purely because it starts to make it look wider up here. So it can sometimes slightly imbalance. It can make the face look wider. So essentially what you want to do is try and keep a very similar length all the way through. So even if you're going for, like, say, a 1 or even down to a 0, just keep the fade slightly higher is a good way to explain it. A more basic way to explain it. It's kind of take the blending a slightly higher. Because if your face is square, it tends to mean that it can concave slightly more here. Okay? So you can get away with having the same haircut without having to leave too much weight and bulk. So again, just keeping everything kind of coming up and off the head when you're blending is always a good way to do it. Again, hairstyle wise on the top, you can have height. You can have it. Maybe I wouldn't have it too much on the forehead, because it'll kind of slightly widen up the face as well if everything's coming down. So I'd go for something like a bit of height in the top to make it kind of elongate the face slightly, so it doesn't look too square. It looks a bit more in proportion in some way. So yeah, going for maybe a pompadour or even just a messy kind of quiff, or even just something like what I've got, where it's just brushed back, but there's a bit of height in it. That's always good style. So yeah, any kind of style that you can kind of keep the same kind of length through the back and sides, I would say is a good one. Especially with squarer face as well. It's always quite nice to leave more length in it on the back and sides too. You've got more rounder face, you don't tend to leave more length in the back and sides because it makes the face look more rounder. Longer hair you could experiment with as well if you've got a square face shape. The haircut itself should emphasize the jawline by keeping that length working on the side. So keeping that one length through the back and sides, or as close to one length as possible, not having too much contrast, but being too short down here to the corner, around the top here, so the round of the head, should we say. That will always automatically emphasize the jawline. Or maybe in the past it hasn't emphasized as much because you've been going too short around the edges and too much bulk at the round of the head. Maybe that's why it's not looking, maybe it's looking more like this, like a point. So yeah, I would go for that. They're my tips for square face shape. The next question is from Daniel Coppang. Daniel says, how to cut straight Asian hair to get more volume and fuller hair. Okay, the key for this is root lift. Okay, so if you've watched any of the videos that we do when we're working on trying to add lift to the hair, is you pick the hair up So say you've got 2 inches, at 1 inch in length through the section, you'll either use a scissor or a razor and you'll slide in and work up. Now what that does, the shorter hair that you leave underneath through the section will hold the straighter hair with more volume. It'll make it stand up more. So the way I try and look at it is, imagine if you shaved your head 5-6 weeks down the line, your hair's spiking up and then starts to lay flat. So the shorter hair goes, the more spike it gets. Okay, usually, especially in straight, thick Asian hair, because that's kind of what my hair is. So I know that myself. So you want more volume, working on root lift. So working halfway down the section, working up. Okay. To get more volume in it is product as well. So once you've cut it that way, you allow the product to work on them shorter hairs. So a volumizing dust or a boost powder, anything that will add, like say, you see volume written on the package, it tends to swell the hair. That's what these products tend to do. Tend to thicken the hair and swell the hair to give the appearance of more hair. The short hair is the thing that will help the longer hair stand up. So that root lift you're putting in, when you're working, say, best example is a boost powder, because we've used styling powders on our videos. Take a section through the hair. So just with your finger, take a section, pull it back, pull it forward, and put the powder at the root. Okay. Do a few sections all over the hair. So maybe just do it in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And just taking sections just in a line all the way back and just sprinkling on some of the powder. Then what you do is, with your fingertips, you rub it into your scalp, basically, right into that short hair. And what that will do, it will give the volume, so it'll stick to the shorter hair and really expand the hair on top of the short hair, which is the length you see left, which will basically kind of make it look bigger and make it stand up. It makes it look really, really big, especially if you've got curly hair. It makes it look huge. So I would say root lift, cutting, like the texture, the secondary shape, and boost powders are fantastic. And any clay, anything dry is brilliant. Good question, that. The next one is from Dark Funk. So what haircut would you recommend for someone with a receding hairline but had curly hair and wants to keep their curls? All depends on the back and sides, to be honest. Because if you've got hair on the back and sides and a receding hairline, it tends to be quite thick on the back and sides, and the front tends to be a bit thinner. So it almost makes your hairline look further back. So if I was you, I'd go for a shorter back and side. So, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be down to like clippers or anything. It can just be down to like, say, finger length short on the back and sides. And then when you're working with curly hair, a good technique is like the crop fringe. The good thing to do is, if you're looking to kind of build that recession here to make the stronger recession, is, as you probably know, you have to cut it a bit lower down. So a bit longer when you cut the fringe. So say, for example, you want the fringe that's here, you probably best cut it down to the eyebrows. As it dries, it shrinks back up. There's actually a video we did in our transformation series with Dylan, I think it was, and he came in, his hair was over his eyes and his face. You literally couldn't see him. He just had a mask on and you could just see hair, and he wanted a skin fade and kind of kept quite heavy on the top. And that was actually a good one for one of the questions we just used there about volume as well, because his hair was quite thin through the middle as well, especially when you wet it down. We use the powder to really create more volume in that. But essentially the haircut you want to go for, the technique you want to go for, is have shorter back and sides to take away from the recession. So again, like I said, if you've got more hair here, you can emphasize the recession, and get the technique where we did on any of our crop fringes, where we layer the hair behind the front section, behind the fringe, heavier on top. So curly hair is brilliant for that. It's probably the best for that kind of technique, because it builds up loads of volume at the front. It builds up the shape and thickness of it, even from the side profile. So pick the length you want for the fringe to look. So if your fringe is, say, coming back to, say, here, but you want it to look really, really full, cut it to where you want it to be. Again, just bearing in mind, it shrinks. Cut the length you want to be, and then start to fill it in from the hair behind it. And that's what will fill in and make the hairline look thicker. And with curly hair, it's even better. You can get, because you can manipulate it with product as well, even easier, because it doesn't tend to separate as much as straight hair does. So I would suggest that technique. So just, again, basically how we've done our crops. Check out the crop videos and you'll kind of get a better understanding. Maybe our first crop video we ever did, which I think my first video I ever did, was that we spent so much time on that technique. You'll be able to see where I'm coming from as well. So yeah, I would go for that, bud. So the next one is from Kyle Armstrong. So any tips for student barbers? Anything that helped you when training? Loads of tips really, but obviously to keep it brief and keep it to the point, I'd say tips are, don't get caught up in sort of focusing on one particular style or technique. Try and learn every technique you possibly can, especially the fundamentals, the foundation techniques. scissor over comb, clipper over comb, working through your fingers, club cutting, which is cutting straight across, point cutting. Obviously fading as well, huge, but I'm pretty sure any student barber now is learning fading before they learn anything else. So try and learn, if you can, the foundations. Practice the foundations, and I guarantee you, the haircuts I do now and the techniques, I've picked up techniques throughout my career, but I learned the foundations, and every single thing that I do in any of our videos are what I learned when I was starting off. And I'm pretty sure any of the guys I trained with or trained with me will see that everything I'm doing is it's not gimmicky at all. It's traditional. It's traditional barbering, just with a few twists from the hairdressing side of things, the creative side of things, and a bit more advanced barbering in some ways with using razors and things. But it is the fundamentals that I've took through life. Literally nothing has changed the way I do it. So learn them, practice them, and perfect them, and you'll just pick up other techniques along the way. And that is all I can say. Good luck in that, mate. Good luck in your journey. Next one is from Mav.Junior. Any example of what you would recommend with someone with thinning hair, more so at the top / crown? If the rest of your hair is very thick, I would suggest going for something like what I've got, brushing it back. We've done a video on that, actually. We had a guy, we didn't use any enhancements, no hair fibers, nothing, just technique. It really was just technique, and obviously his growth. So it was kind of a team effort. He grew the hair and I helped kind of fit the right technique in it. But yeah, I would say if you can wear your hair going back, that'd be fantastic. Because again, you can still get the crown cut a bit shorter, just emphasize the height of the front. So say, you know, if you're not too tall, if you're not like in your, the mid 6 feet in height, then, wearing a high fringe, perfect. It doesn't add any more height on it. Well, it adds height, but it doesn't take away anything kind of feature wise on the face. So I would do that if you can, brush it back. It is hard otherwise, because crown is so exposed. The only thing you can do is brush it back. But maybe get like a faded or something like that. So it looks like it looks really on trend as well. It's not like you're trying to cover something. So maybe go for maybe a high taper on the neck, so that you start to see real scalp exposure, and then you got the top length kind of covering the crown. Because from a distance, if you get scalp exposure anywhere on the back and sides, it will take away the effect of the top being thinner. Because the eye will be focused to the blender. It always is. Even on non-barbers, people appreciate a really good fade nowadays. So I would go for something like that, maybe a really high tapered neck or something. I think that'd be great. And again, product choice as well. Wearing a dry product as well is always a good one. Because again, it helps to clump the hair together, and as you comb it through, it doesn't separate it as much. And our last question is from SMNC90. What's the difference between a fade and a taper? I can't tell the difference. I thought this would be considered a taper, so obviously on one of our videos. So the difference between a fade and a taper, the technical term for a taper is reducing unnecessary length. That's what I was taught anyway. And obviously a fade is a blend. Now, the word fade is a kind of, I wouldn't say relatively new, but it's relatively new to me because I've been doing it for a long time now. But a fade is what we used to just call a blend. It is a graduation. Technical terms, it's a graduation of length. The word fade has just become very, very common. Like it's the most commonly used term for these haircuts, where you remove all of the length, regardless if it's a 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. I have some clients come in asking for a 4 fade, which again, it makes me giggle sometimes, because I've never really the word fade, when it's used that way, it just makes me giggle. It's not nothing against them. I would never back in the day, I would never use that word at all for anything, because it was just a blend. It was just a 4 around the back and sides. Everyone should just assume you're going to blend it in. I'd say the difference with a fade and a taper is a fade is when you work around the whole back and sides. Okay, so it can be from here, it can be from here, and it can be even quite low as well. But it's when you work uniform all the way around the back and sides, going from long to short. A taper is when you remove unwanted hair, unnecessary hair, mainly sideburns and the neck. So that's when you don't need all this neck hair because it gets in the way, it looks untidy. You generally use a taper to clean that area up. So generally, if you're looking at a fade all the way around the back and sides uniform, a taper is from the sides, sideburns and the neck. But you still tend to leave hair elsewhere. So it tends to be shorter through the sideburns and the neckline, around the nape. So that's the difference between a taper and a fade. And that's it. I mean, some great questions there. Thanks very much for taking the time to ask questions for us. It's always nice to kind of interact as best I can, try and answer as many as we can, because you can get lost sometimes on the videos. So yeah, if you've got any other questions, leave them in the comments, and stay tuned for our Regal Gentleman education. Okay, it's going to be, there's a lot of other questions that I've seen on the comments, and a lot of questions I've been getting sent as well. But when we can announce it and what we're doing, I'm pretty sure we'll have all your questions answered as well. All right, so keep an eye out for that. It will be along very soon. Held back a bit because of what's happened here, but it'll be along very soon. So thank you very much, and I'll see you behind the chair shortly. Thank you.